July 20th, 1969. The world held its breath as Neil Armstrong took that giant leap for mankind. Humanity had finally touched the moon, but what if I told you? There were missions planned after Apollo 17 that never happened. Secret blueprints, rockets already built, astronauts already trained. And yet, those journeys to the moon were suddenly cancelled. Why did NASA abandon its moon missions? What really happened to Apollo 18, 19, and 20? And could there be hidden truths about what astronauts actually saw on the lunar surface? Today we uncover the full story of NASA's abandoned moon missions. The space race begins. The story begins in the 1950s and 60s. The Cold War was at its peak. The United States and the Soviet Union weren't just rivals on Earth. They were competing for dominance in space. The Soviets struck first, 1957. Sputnik became the first satellite in orbit. 61. Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space. America was falling behind. That's when President John F. Kennedy made his historic speech in 1961, promising to land a man on the moon before the decade was out. This led to the Apollo program, the most ambitious space project in history, the triumph of Apollo. From 1969 to 1972, NASA launched Apollo 11 through Apollo 17. Apollo 11, first moon landing. Apollo 12, precision landing near Surveyor spacecraft. Apollo 14, overcame technical failures to succeed. Apollo 15, first lunar rover. Apollo 16, explored lunar. Highlands. Apollo 17, last mission, astronauts. Harrison Schmitt and Gene Cernan explored the Taurus-Littrow Valley. By the end of Apollo 17 in December 1972, 12 men had walked on the moon. The missions were dangerous, expensive, but also groundbreaking, so why did they stop? The cancelled Apollo missions? What many don't know is that NASA had planned at least 3 more moon missions. Apollo 18, 19, and 20. Apollo 18 was scheduled for 1973, targeting the Copernicus crater, one of the moon's most scientifically interesting sites. Apollo 19 was planned for 1974, aimed at the lunar highlands. Apollo 20 would have been the grand finale, exploring the moon's far side, possibly the Tycho crater. Astronauts were already selected, and Saturn V rockets were already built. The future of space exploration seemed unstoppable. But then, everything changed. Why NASA abandoned the missions? There were 3 main reasons. Budget cuts. By the early 1970s, the U.S. economy was struggling with the Vietnam War, inflation, and domestic issues. The Apollo program had cost over $25 billion, over $150 billion in today's money. Congress decided space exploration was simply too expensive. Public interest. Decline. Apollo 11 was historic, but after that, the public got bored. By Apollo 13, interest spiked because of the near disaster. But Apollo 14-17 saw declining TV ratings. People stopped watching astronauts walk on the moon. Shifting priorities. NASA shifted its focus to low Earth orbit projects like the Skylab space station and the upcoming Space Shuttle program. The moon had been conquered. The next step was reusable spacecraft, not more moon landings, and so, in 1970, NASA announced the cancellation of Apollo 18, 19, and 20. The astronauts who had trained for years were reassigned. The rockets built for those missions were either repurposed or placed in museums. The dream of continued moon exploration was suddenly over. The lost rockets and astronauts. What happened to the equipment? One Saturn V rocket was used to launch Skylab in 1973. Another is on display at the Kennedy Space Center. The third never flew and became a museum piece. Astronauts like Richard Gordon, who had trained to walk on the moon for Apollo 18, never got their chance. For them, it was a heartbreaking ending. The myths and conspiracies. Even though Apollo 18, 19, and 20 were cancelled, rumors and conspiracies soon spread. Some claim NASA did launch Apollo 18 in secret, and that astronauts discovered alien structures or UFOs on the moon. The 2011 sci-fi horror movie Apollo 18 fueled this theory, portraying astronauts attacked by alien creatures. Others believe Apollo 20 secretly went to the far side of the moon and found a giant alien spaceship. Of course, NASA officially denies these stories, insisting the missions never happened. But the lack of transparency during the Cold War left room for speculation. The cost of abandonment. By stopping moon missions, humanity lost momentum. If Apollo had continued, we could have built lunar bases in the 1980s. We might have tested nuclear power on the moon. We could have started launching missions to Mars decades earlier. Instead, humanity stayed stuck in Earth's orbit for nearly 50 years. The moon remained untouched by humans after 1972. The future of moon missions. But the story isn't over. Today, NASA is planning to return to the moon through the Artemis program. Artemis, I already tested the Orion spacecraft. Artemis 2 will send astronauts around the moon. Artemis III aims to land humans on the lunar surface again, possibly by 2026. Private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are also joining the race, hoping to make lunar exploration sustainable. The abandoned missions of Apollo may have been lost dreams, but they laid the foundation for our future. The story of NASA's abandoned moon missions is a reminder of how fragile human ambition can be. We touched the stars, but then turned away. Politics, money, and shifting priorities stopped us from going further. Yet, the moon is still there, silent, waiting. Humanity's unfinished chapter. The Apollo missions proved we could do it. The Artemis missions may prove we can do it again. The real question is, this time will we stay?